mes amis et bienvenue dans cette nouvelle vidéo. Un petit peu différente des autres, nous partons à la découverte de deux couples de navigateurs. On va faire le portrait de deux couples de navigateurs où vraiment il y a les deux extrêmes. C'est-à-dire que le premier couple, il en est à son deuxième tour du monde, avec sa 14e année de navigation. Et le deuxième couple, il en est à son 7e mois de navigation. Donc vous verrez vraiment la différence entre ces deux couples. Et puis tout l'interview de ces personnes est en anglais. Raison pour laquelle cette vidéo n'est pas disponible au travers de Facebook, parce que Facebook ne vous propose pas la possibilité d'activer les sous-titres de votre langue préférée. Donc à regarder uniquement au travers de YouTube. Vous pouvez aller dans les réglages en haut à droite de YouTube et activer les sous-titres dans dans la langue de votre choix. Comme ça, les sous-titres se font de façon absolument automatique. J'ai testé, ça fonctionne extrêmement bien. Je vous mets quelques captures d'écran pour savoir comment faire pour activer ces sous-titres. Mais l'intégralité des interviews, l'intégralité de ces deux portraits, sont sous-titrés en français ou dans la langue que vous souhaitez, de langue de base anglaise. Voilà, pour ceux qui connaissent bien l'anglais, il n'y a pas de problème, vous pouvez écouter tout ce qui se passe. Et pour les autres, activez simplement les sous-titres. Je vous présente Brent et Anna, ou Anna et Brent, du catamaran Impy.
Bonjour.
Qui en sont déjà un bon bout du deuxième tour du monde. Et puis je vais les laisser se présenter. I let you say whatever you want on the video.
Yeah, okay, so Michelle asked us just to present ourselves and to present the boat and how long we have been sailing and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think for us, I'm from South Africa. Anna and I met a lot later in life. We decided to buy a boat together. And we decided to buy the Lagoon 440.
Which was frowned upon in South Africa, of course.
Yeah, in South Africa this was frowned upon because it's built by the French. And I'm kidding, Michelle. I am kidding, right?
Brent has really good taste because I have a French passport and his boat is French. There we go.
Our boat is French, yes. So we bought the boat together from the factory in France. It's a 2009 model. Mm-hmm. We brought the boat back to Cape Town in South Africa via Salvador, Brazil, and we spent 2 years to modify a brand new boat to be a world cruising boat, because catamarans are very wide platforms and therefore they are moving a lot in the ocean, and this takes its toll on boats which are built basically for charter work. And so we did a lot of modifications to the boat to make the boat a world cruising catamaran.
And we thought that it was going to be the beginning of our dream when we bought our boat. But actually it was a little bit nightmarish because there were so many things we had to change on the boat to make it a world cruising boat, right?
Yes, we were learning as we were going basically. And yes, so we've done a lot of modifications. We've been sailing full time now for, I think this is our 14th year now. 14 years.
Yeah, left in 2011. So
left South Africa 2011, sailed across to Fortaleza in Brazil. And we've been around the world. We met Michelle and Corinne on their beautiful catamaran Javerne. Of which there are very few of these catamarans in the world. We're actually very sorry to see Michelle selling the boat now because
maybe he won't.
Maybe he won't. He shouldn't, because you do not sell such a beautiful boat. But anyway, we met them in their beautiful catamaran Javerne in was it Malaysia, I think? Yes, it was in Malaysia we met them. Yeah. He had hauled the boat and he was doing a whole lot of work, and back then he wasn't that friendly actually, because he was so busy doing modifications to Javerne that he didn't want to speak to a South African on the dock. But this is fine. He's turned out to be a really spectacular guy, and we've grown to love them very much, and been very impressed with their boat, and with Michelle and Corinne as a couple. And so, Michelle, we look forward to following your travels into Madagascar. And then we hooked up with Michelle and Corinne quite a bit in Madagascar, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, so this was fantastic. And this is the sailing life. Cas and Karika are here from Namibia. And, you know, we meet sailors from all different walks of life with all different types of boats. And we get to chat about the problems we have on our boats. And this is why I say no catamaran is a perfect cruising boat. We all have issues, but we do what we need to do to make our boats strong and make them really good seagoing boats. I think, you know, just thinking about the many years that we've been sailing, technology has really changed a lot, hasn't it?
Amazingly, like especially the sharing of knowledge. Before it was just other cruisers who you would have conversations with, and they would tell you what works and what doesn't work.
There was no YouTube.
There was no YouTube channel.
Nothing,
when we left, there was very little information. There was just a lot of sort of muscle flexing on cruisers forum, if I can call it that. You know, guys just...
Yeah, you had to read very carefully between the lines, you know.
Yeah.
Including stuff I used to say as well. I mean, you know, we were all learning and we were passionate about what we were doing, but a lot of misinformation was out there. Yeah. Well done, Michelle. Your channel is actually very accurate in so many ways, and you got to keep that up, because on many channels you've got to read between the lines. I think one of the biggest things we see on a lot of YouTube channels is people claiming to be sailing on a very small budget. But it will catch you eventually, because, you know, you cannot maintain your boat on a small budget. So, you know, one has to be careful of
that.
That
is really a myth that you can sail on $2,000 a month. That means probably that you have no insurance for your boat and that you have no medical insurance. Because for us, at our age in particular, that's already nearly $2,000 gone. Just like that, without doing anything. Okay? And of course you try to sail, but you do need to have diesel on board. So that's definitely $2,000 gone then, I think so.
Not in a month.
What, with insurance and, our insurance.
Oh, you mean in total?
Yeah.
Yes, in total.
And then you haven't eaten anything, you haven't maintained anything, you haven't replaced anything. And obviously with the mileage that we have been doing, like we didn't just like whip around the world in 18 months like certain people do, and it's totally fine to do that. But we actually took 12 years going backwards and forwards to New Caledonia 7 times, between Australia, New Caledonia and New Zealand. These kind of mileages 3 times to Indonesia, that actually makes wear and tear on your boat, basically.
Yeah. So we choose, on Impi, we choose to stop the boat for maybe 2 months in a year. In some years it's been longer, in some years it's been shorter. And then to haul the boat and to go through everything and to attend to any problems we see. To replace parts before they fail so that you don't have a knock-on effect to breakdowns. But to replace parts before they fail. These days you've got such fancy gear, like you've got load cells on your on your rigging to sort of see how many tons you're pulling when you put the sails up, when you should reef, when you should not reef. You know, we have now lithium batteries, which when we started sailing nobody had lithium batteries. Still today we meet a lot of sailors who tell us their batteries are not lasting. But people do not consider, you know, taking your batteries over the tail end curve when you're charging, and therefore, you know, they have the voltage but they don't have the capacity behind the voltage. And so there's still a lot of people on the water. I think with modern technology people are getting onto the water easier without having the sort of drama that we had in the past. You know, which has helped us to develop our skills in troubleshooting and this sort of thing. Michelle, a lot of the time we get criticized for advertising the fact that we always go for new technology, which we do. Older sailors are saying to us, you know, this is not good because you lose your touch with the old techniques. So for example, if you have a war coming and they turn off all the satellites, what are you doing? So we take note of that because it is true, that we should be keeping up our skills.
We've got a whole cupboard full of world paper charts.
World paper charts, we have the sextant to do noon sight readings, we plot our positions on the chart. So we can do dead reckoning.
We keep our logbook religiously when we do passages. We take note of what planets are where, what the moon is doing, when, and so on and so on. So we are, I think, very much in touch with our external environment and not just fixed on what a screen is telling us.
We plan for the worst, and we hope for the best.
Because they are actually I think it was in the Red Sea, they're actually spoofing now. You know what that is. So you think you are in a place, but you're not in that place.
They're building inaccuracies into your GPS positions.
And so
how do yachties handle this, and how do they actually know? You're sailing at night and you think you're somewhere on a chart, but you are actually somewhere else. So you want to be plotting your position on paper charts and to know really where you are at. I think things like even in the cooking in the kitchen, we now have air fryers and
I mean, lithium batteries have just revolutionized how you can cook on a boat and make it a lot safer, particularly on passage. You can just put things in your air fryer, which is like very safe way of cooking, even on a monohull actually, because you don't have everything like moving around on a gas stove. And it is also really creative and better for your health to have less fats and so on.
The technologies it's incredible how things are evolving.
I remember us in South Africa with a dear old friend really criticizing us for having load cells and saying, well, that we wouldn't be able.
It wasn't Michelle.
No, it wasn't Michelle.
Nearly, but
no. It was another dude, not French. Anyway, we didn't arrive twice without a mast in South Africa.
No, don't say that. That literally happened. It was kind of like, you know, we've learned through the hard knocks of life. So we're not sitting here saying we know it all, because we've learned the really hard way over 13 years to get to this point.
Like, we thought it was a good idea to do Indonesia in one season, right?
Yeah.
From the top of Raja Ampat all the way to the Anambas Islands through the middle. Yes.
Yeah, we paid the price.
We paid the price.
Yeah, we did. We paid the price. We actually sailed into a storm where a ship had capsized and 25 souls were lost on board. We've had MP in a storm for 3 days with a minimum 70 knot winds. Not over 80, but between 70 and 80 knots for 3 days. So we learned survival techniques there.
Yeah.
So we've paid the price. But with this, we've also taught ourselves to learn more and more about weather. And so technology is fantastic in weather, because weather is changing and the technology is also advancing when it comes to weather. So we are learning from people about weather all the time. We share information about weather, and in sharing you gain knowledge, and it's come in leaps and bounds. And this has made for a much more comfortable passages for us, I think.
I think ever since, what was it, Bali? Since Bali, so that was in 2023, July probably, when we left there, going to Christmas Island, Cocos Keeling, then from there to Madagascar, to South Africa to St. Helena, to Ascension, and then down to Rio. I have not one single time felt anxious that we were in dangerous weather. It has been smooth sailing for the past 18 months, I would say.
I think just a typical example of this, and we can share this because I know Michelle's also very careful with weather and watching weather and talks to people about weather, and you know, when he's on passages. And I think, you know, a very good example of this is when we left Cocos Keeling.
Yeah.
And there was a very strong weather surge coming up. We could see it coming up all the way from Cape Town, and it was going to reach us while we were crossing the Indian Ocean. And we left with other boats, and we recommended that they come 60 miles south with us. And they thought we were crazy, you know, because we were sailing towards the storm. But with the technology that we had in weather predictions, we could see that although the waves were bigger, they were more swells and not breaking waves. The wind wave component height within the total wave height, the combined wave height, had quite a low wind wave component to it, whereas for a boat sticking on the rum line, he had a very high wind wave component in the combined wave maker. Anyway, we all left. They decided to stay on the rum line. We sailed 60 miles to the south, and we had some of the most fantastic sailing we've ever had in our life, down to Madagascar. I think it was a 16-day passage for us or something. Yeah. The other boats never arrived, and we actually declared them, I think after a month and a half, we declared them as missing boats. Anyway, it turned out that their boats had got totally trashed in the storm, that the waves had overwhelmed their boats, and some of them were modern catamarans, leopard, one of them a leopard, and they had literally had to divert to Chagos with a lot of damage. And we were fortunate to be able to chat with the owner of one of the boats in Cape Town. And he was saying he could not believe the difference. And he was describing the conditions that he found himself in, 60 miles apart from MP, which was having favorable conditions.
And of course, the great help in weather prediction is Starlink, where you can keep on evaluating all of the time what is actually going to be happening in the next couple of days, how you can get around storms.
Yeah, Starlink's been a game changer.
It's been a real game changer.
Yeah.
So thank you, Elon. But just make sure those satellites stay up there.
and even to that end, you know, we are not relying totally on Starlink. Starlink is a very stable service. It's a very stable technology in terms of transmitting signal and that sort of thing. It's a little bit unstable in its service to clients because it keeps changing its price, it keeps changing its program. Sailors never know if they are going to be able to afford Starlink or not be able to afford Starlink. We budget for it, and then Starlink ups its price and changes things, and you can see it's a very stressful feeling for a lot of us sailors because Starlink is that important to us. So for us, we're keeping our old technology like the Iridium Go.
Iridium Go, and we got an InReach.
InReach Garmin.
And I would recommend particularly to people who are getting on a boat to keep an InReach, because it is just a fantastic tool. In case you have a real emergency, all you have to do is press that button. You press that button and immediately the center contacts you to find out what the trouble is. And this happened not to us but to a friend of ours. He was in a boat really close to us in Indonesia. And although we had recommended for him to have the InReach, he didn't know how to operate it. But
actually, this is quite an interesting point. They were too nervous to press the button.
Yeah.
And so, you know, after contacting InReach in America, their first response was press the button so we can actually react. A lot of sailors, when we posted that on Facebook back in the day, a lot of sailors said they did not realize that you could actually press the button unless you were already in a life-threatening situation. But InReach Garmin is not the final stop. They actually have their own response unit. And they were telling us that they really wish people would just press the button so that they can interact with him before it becomes a real emergency. That's something we actually learned, because when we took off from South Africa in those years ago,
we had nothing like it.
There was nothing like
it's
that.
Just your EPIRB.
You had an EPIRB, you were not allowed to trigger it unless it was a total emergency. You were heavily fined if you did trigger it. So this is another technology that's evolved where you can actually press that button, and you can also text them messages if you're in the water. and these sort of things.
So I think the communication systems have really changed in those 14 years that we have been traveling around the world.
Yeah.
I would say that is really the major improvement, together with the
batteries, I think,
battery management. Apart from that, we still got our old boat.
Yeah, and look, we're getting older too, you know, and unfortunately we can't haul ourselves out in the boatyard once a year and get new fiberglass and body reshaping, you know, we just have to...
Well, you can if you want to, really.
Well, you know, I mean, the dentist pulls a tooth and pushes a fake tooth in, that's like good, but I don't think it's buying much life, you know. So yeah, we're getting older. We're now in our 60s. We retired at age 45. Yeah. And it's gone so fast, like so fast. Yeah. We're now in our 60s and we still feel like we're the youngsters on the water until we meet people like Cass and Karika and, you know, the young bucks out there. You know, and you, Michelle, although you told me your age the other day, you just look young, mate. I don't know how you're doing that, but he just looks young. And but he does a lot of airbrushing on his videos and lipstick, and I watched him. So this is why he always looks so good on your YouTube videos.
You said your piece now?
I've done.
Okay. Like a nice story, something nice that has happened to you.
Because we are always talking about bad things.
I think Moose the dog.
Yeah. I think that is probably the most amazing thing that happened to us, and why we went 7 times to New Caledonia. Because unlike a lot of other South African people who departed Cape Town, our aim was never to hang in the Caribbean. From the start, we had our eyes set on Polynesia and New Caledonia, maybe because I speak French, I've got a French passport. But it really intrigued me when I read books about those islands, and I really wanted to go there. And we spent 2 seasons in Polynesia, which was unusual at the time, and then went via Fiji and Tonga to New Caledonia. And when we got there, all of these people were talking about Moose the dog on Ilokasi in Baie de Prony. And we were like, oh, we must go and see this dog, because people were saying that when you arrive there, this dog is on the dock, he comes and greets you, and then he's like a guide. He takes you around the island, you know, he takes you for a walk. And we thought, wow, we must really go and see that. And it's also a really beautiful place. So we arrived there, and lo and behold, there was Moose. I gave him some bully beef, which I had bought for the Tongan chiefs, but I still left over. So he was eating his bully beef, and then he looked over his shoulder, and yes, he was going to take us on a walk around the island. But before this happened, all of a sudden he jumped into the water, caught a fish and dragged it out, and we were like, wow!
We put this actually on back then we had a YouTube channel, which we don't do much with at all anymore, but we had a YouTube channel which showed Moose diving and catching fish, and people all over the world fell in love with Moose, the abandoned island dog.
Yeah. So that was the first time we came to New Caledonia, and because it is hit by cyclones, it's always recommended that you leave New Caledonia and you head for New Zealand. So there came a day that we had to say goodbye to Moose. And I must say, I actually cried, because he had become such a friend. And we filmed saying goodbye to him, headed for New Zealand. And when we got there and we posted the movie, particularly the New Zealanders were so upset with us.
People were very upset because we abandoned an abandoned island dog. So we said to them, okay, we will sail back to New Caledonia. We were going to go from New Zealand to Australia.
Yeah.
We'll sail back to New Caledonia to go and check on the dog.
Right.
So we sailed back to New Caledonia after cyclone season.
And we arrived there, and you have to pick up mooring balls there because it's a reserve. And actually, Moose has got a special statut, if I can say it in French. So he is the only sort of animal that is non-native allowed on the island because it's a reserve. Anyway, we arrived there, and we haven't even picked up a mooring ball yet that moose jumps in the water and comes swimming towards us.
He recognized us, yeah.
He recognized us after all this time, you know, like at least 6 months. So he like came swimming towards us, and I was so worried about the propellers. And anyway, I told him to go back to the beach in French, thinking that he would understand me better in French.
Yeah, you were talking a lot of French to him, but also to me it wasn't good French to him. Because she thought I was going to reverse over Moose with the propeller. So I turned off the engines.
Yeah.
But Moose was, long story short, Moose was sick.
Yeah,
he was not well. He was very ill.
He
But
had heartworm.
But nobody could remove the dog from the island. He refused to be removed from the island.
Yeah.
We spoke to the what do they call?
The vet.
Lagon.
Protection du Lagon.
Protection
So
de Lagon.
we spoke to them because I found every single veterinary in Nouméa, and they all refused to come to the island because supposedly it belonged to a Kanaki tribe, and so they weren't allowed on there.
The French were having problems between the Kanaks and the French a little bit, and so there was a little bit of tension back then. And so the vets did not want to come and help.
So I contacted this one guy that Protection du Lagon told me to contact, but he was on holiday in the US. His name is Guy Kang. He speaks fluent English and fluent French because he's actually born American, I think. Right?
He's born American, but he's French.
Yeah.
He's lived in French territory all his life, basically.
Apart from Malaysia.
Apart from Malaysia.
So, and he said, well, on Monday I am back, and I am willing to listen to your story. I went with an Italian friend, Isabella, and we both went to see him, and he agreed to fly with his plane. It's a plane with like skis underneath, and to land there and to treat the dog
with money that we had raised actually through YouTube. Which was a very nice thing of the people. You know, the community.
The community, YouTube community raised about $3,000 for Moose, which enabled Guy to fly out every month and to give him pain treatment because he had arthritis, he had heartworm, and he had an ear infection, and because of the fire ants he had like acid in his eyes. So those were all of the problems that he had. And then through that I came in contact with all of the organizations that were protecting animals. And one of the big problems is that in the Loyalty Islands, which are part of New Caledonia, and Ile de Pin, which is part of it, where mostly the Kanaki people live, there are no veterinaries.
Well, in the old years, the Kanaks were moved from the main island to the Loyalty Islands.
They were the reserves.
So it was like a reserve that they put the local people onto.
Yeah.
Many years ago, about 35 years ago now, there was they captured some gendarmes
on
Uvia, and there was a big fight between the French people and the Kanaks, let's say. Some gendarmes died, some Kanaks died, and then they had the Nouméa Accords.
Les Accords de Nouméa.
So, and they had the whole voting session, but anyway, this is politics that the French already understand. But we decided to do a program on some of the outer islands, which include these islands, together with French vets. And we actually got a letter out of Paris from politicians to thank us for doing this, because they were saying we think we are treating animals, but actually we're uniting people, because the divide was making it difficult for French vets to go and look after animals on the islands.
Yeah.
So
our program was partially sponsored by the province, partially sponsored by people in Australia. So all of the cruisers who left with a certain rally for New Caledonia, they would put $50 in towards animal welfare.
Yep.
And it was partially sponsored by the people across the world that we met and that we, interestingly enough, helped with their dogs.
Yeah, and the government was also match funding.
Yeah.
So if we
whatever we raised, they would match fund.
And that for us, I think, Michelle, was a beautiful story, because this evolved not because of us, but in a way through us. just not knowing what we were really doing, but just to help some animals on the
Yeah.
island.
So from one
And-
dog, we actually neutered probably about 600 dogs.
Yeah.
And the program is carrying on.
It's resulted in us sailing back to New
Yeah,
Caledonia
7
times
Yeah.
and Australia 7 times. So we got to know Australians really well, and the French. I've got so many French friends. They taught me how to sing Alouette Gentil. This was their way to try and teach me how to speak French. But after some months, my French friends, please, Brent, do not attempt to speak French again. You make my language look bad, man, bad. So then I was trying to sing another song to be more sexy. What was it called again?
Pour un flirt,
Ah, pour un flirt avec toi,
je ferai
n'importe quoi, pour un flirt avec toi. But this one, it's also not working. Huh? I don't know. The French, they have a difficult time with me speaking their language.
No.
It's sad because I sing it well apparently,
No,
but
he did like one of these quizzes on Facebook, which nationality he most conformed to, and it came out France.
yeah, they did a survey on me. They were going to make me an honorary Frenchman. But then when they listened to me trying to speak it, they said maybe not. Next time. I always hear next time. Everything
Okay.
is next time.
Ça va?
Thank you, Brent and Anna.
Thank you,
And
Michelle.
enjoy the rest of your life on the boat.
Thank you, my buddy. Cheers.
Right.
Between these women.
Karika and Cass, you are from
Namibia
Namibia
and South Africa.
and South Africa. Tell us a little bit about your story. When did you start? Which type of boat do you have? How long, how many years are you sailing? And tell us everything.
Michelle, we have got to have a look at the date before I can tell you exactly how long we've been sailing, but it's now about 6 months and 2 weeks that we've been sailing. We started in COVID when we wanted to go have a look at Uruguay, and a few days before our flight to Uruguay, the airlines let us know that all the flights were cancelled and we couldn't go anymore. We were very fortunate that we were not already in Uruguay while the flights were cancelled, because then we would have been stuck there. So that was about 6 days before our flight. And then I told Karika, but if we're not allowed to fly there, then we will sail there.
And I was, of course, not happy.
It was to both of us a big surprise. And we started looking for a boat.
No, Gus started looking for a boat. I was still not convinced.
I found a boat in Lüderitz that was already around the world once. A steel boat, a monohull, 51 foot, a very strong boat. And we decided, we drove down to Lüderitz twice from where we were staying, about 1,000 kilometers, to go have a look at the boat. And eventually we decided we will buy the boat. And we bought the boat. And we drove down another 2 times to Lüderitz to go fetch the boat. The first time I realized there was a problem with the heat exchanger for the engine. So if we are going, we would be going on sails only and not the engine at all. And I decided it's too big a risk, and we went back home without a boat. And I ordered all the spare parts from America, and on the next time we went to Lüderitz, we spent a few days there again, installing the new parts and testing, and everything was good. And then we let loose. We were 5 of us on the boat, 1 experienced person, Paul from Lüderitz, and further it was me, Karika, my son and my mother. And we did from Lüderitz to Walfish Bay in 2 days.
Of course, we had no wind.
Lüderitz is usually extremely windy. When we departed at Lüderitz, the whole ocean was looking like a dam. There was not a ripple on the water. There was not a wave, there was nothing. And that I kept on going for a day and a half, and then eventually close to Walvis Bay, the last night we started getting wind, and I was in my element because I could start sailing, and I enjoyed it so much. We got to Luderitz, to Walvis Bay, and a few months later we took the boat out of the water because it had to be repaired. It was a very old boat, steel boat. There was a lot of rust on the boat, quite a few holes in the deck itself already, and that took about a year for us to get all the paint and get all the work done, and the boat was in the water. Then it took about another 4 months before we could put on the masts. I was working about 500 kilometers away from Walvis Bay, so it was very difficult. My time was very limited when I got to the coast on what I can do on the boat. And after a long time I told Karika, we have got to decide on a date on when we are going, because otherwise it will just be postponed and postponed and postponed, and we will never do it.
Yes.
And we decided on a date, and I resigned my job, and about 2 months later she resigned her job, and we were too young to be pensioners, so we were basically jobless. We
were unemployed.
We were basically unemployed. I went to the boat full time to rewire the complete boat, all the electricity, redo that. A lot of the plumbing needed to be redone. There was almost no instrumentation on the boat. All of that had to be installed. I did it all myself, and it is important to have a reliable communication and reliable instruments on the boat. Yes, we could have sailed only with a compass and the sails and the sextant, but
that might have been a problem for me. You would have been alright with that.
So there is other ways of making it easier and keeping it safer. We did what we could. We did what we could afford on the boat, and I did not try to save money on the electronics. I made sure I got good electronics, reliable electronics, and also Starlink. It is very important for Karika to keep in communication with her family, and a happy wife is a happy life. So that saved me a lot of times. It also made it much easier to get weather forecast 2-3 times a day. Whenever you want to, you can get a forecast. And it happened to us on one of these voyages that the weather ahead of us changed so dramatically, and we could see it coming, that we made the call to divert to a complete different area to make sure that we stay out of the weather. Experience wise, we had no experience. We have never sailed before. We wasn't even on a sailboat where somebody else sailed and we were as guests on the boat. We have never been sailing.
But you had a lot of navigation experience, which counted a little bit.
In one of my previous lives, I was a commercial pilot, and I was doing that for about 10 years. So the navigation part of the sailing was fairly easy for me. The weather forecasting is fairly easy. Sailing and flying is not that much different. Where the wings of the aircraft is flat on a sailboat, you basically picked up the wing and it is up there, and you've got the same airflow over the sails, everything like that, and that made it much easier for us to adapt to.
And Gus didn't want me to do watch at night because he was worried that we will end up back in Walvis Bay. Because I didn't know anything about navigation.
We left the 2nd of February.
Yes.
With a lot of tears and all the family standing on the jetty and the marina and waving and crying because they never know when they're going to see us again and if they're going to see us again. And we left Walvis Bay, and the first 2 days were beautiful. It was smooth sailing, it was nice, we enjoyed it. and it was not hard. That was the calm before the storm. Then for the next 4 days we had a front that came out of nowhere. It escalated dramatically. Winds of between 30 and 40 knots, waves of between 3 and 4 meters, and that was the first time for us in our lives. We got through that. Karika was sitting in the front room in the boat with the 2 dogs, with the life jackets on, and everybody was waiting because there were ships that were coming straight to us, and he didn't want to divert, and according to the instruments, there is a COC of 0.00. They are going to hit us, and we tried to get out of the way. We called him on the radio, and 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, at some time I got hold of the person, and very close to us, he actually started diverting from us because he realized that he is going to hit us, and he missed us with about 200 meters. After that, the weather calmed down quite a bit. We started relaxing, we started getting the rhythm. I slept about 1 hour a day. I was so stressed because what did I get us into? And everybody's life is in my hands because I suggested this, and everybody's looking at me. In the meantime, they were very happy on what's going on, and because they didn't realize the danger we were in. We made it to St. Helena, caught some fish on the way there as well, and at St. Helena I think we were a bit bombshell shocked, what do you call it, when we got there, and fishing at St. Helena was so nice. We stayed there for 4 months before we decided to go again. Part of it was we was having an excuse of that we are still working on the boat a little bit, and we still need to do a few things before we can go, and that kept on going and kept on going until
we really enjoyed St. Helena, and we were
good.
sad to go. It was a nice place with nice people, and of course the fishing.
If I can recommend to anybody that is sailing in the southern Atlantic, they must go to St. Helena Island. The people is unbelievable. The saints, as they call themselves. It is a bunch of people there with hearts of gold.
Absolutely.
We enjoyed it very much there. The weather started changing to the winter time there, and the winds started picking up quite a bit, and the currents started changing, and the waves and the swells in the anchorage area became a little bit bad. So we set sail again on the 15th of June.
I can't remember, it must have been
July. 15th of July. No, June.
No, it was June.
Yeah,
we
right.
arrived in July. July
and on the we were supposed to sail to Angra dos Reis in the south of Brasilia, and on the way there, about halfway, we saw this front developing along the coast, coming from the south, from Uruguay up north, and I realized we're going to run straight into that, and with our limited experience I did not want to do it. And one day Karika woke up in the morning and I told her we changed course, and we're going for Salvador, and she was happy with that.
Just going, okay, good, you know what you are doing.
Did I? We went to Salvador, arrived there, and we stayed in Salvador for 2 months. It was beautiful. We were staying so long in St. Helena that all the sailors that came past there on the way to Brazil in that past 4 months, we met them all again in Salvador, and it is like reuniting with a family.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful, and we started going up north with the family, and it seems like some of us will be going different ways from here, but that is the sailing life. You meet up with people just to say goodbye a few weeks later, and to meet up with them later on again and reunite, and it is like nothing changed. We keep in touch permanently, and if I can recommend to anybody that has got a dream of doing the sailing thing, do it while you still can, while you're still young enough and strong enough to do it. And the second piece of advice, get a strong boat.
Especially if you have little experience like us.
If you've
to
got little
begin with.
experience, the sea doesn't take prisoners. If you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it can happen very quickly, you need a strong boat. Be careful, enjoy it. We enjoy every second of it, and we cannot see us. I can't see myself going back into an office or sit in an office and work an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 or anything like that.
Just to sit in an office, point. Even if it's for 2 hours a day.
It is beautiful. It is a beautiful life. And
Beautiful people.
we hope that we will be able to do it for a long time to come. And no dream is too big. You can dream, and you can dream big, and you can do it.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
and enjoy your farther life of
Thank
sailing.
you very much. What I can say is the sailors look after each other, and there was a few of them that came into our lives that gave us advice and helped us and coached us and guided us, and we are so thankful for that, because Namibia does not have any sailing schools that we could have gone to and learned all the special techniques. We learned it. We learned ourselves to sail
As we went.
as we went.
Thanks a lot, guys. J'espère que vous aurez appris des tas de choses, des tas d'informations intéressantes. N'hésitez pas à poser des questions dans les commentaires, parce que ces deux couples de navigateurs sont avec nous pour l'instant, donc nous sommes en pleine navigation actuellement. Et si vous avez des questions spécialement à leur poser ou autres, n'hésitez pas. Je transmettrai l'information, car c'est vraiment des parcours vraiment intéressants. Je vous souhaite une excellente semaine à tous. N'activez pas la cloche, ne vous abonnez pas à notre chaîne, on s'en fout royalement. On a tellement de plaisir à vous avoir chaque semaine pour regarder nos vidéos. Voilà, on vous souhaite une excellente semaine, des gros bisous et à très bientôt pour des nouvelles aventures de Javerne. Bye!